Hello and welcome viewers, I'm Pia and you're watching the World Report on NewsX World. On that note, let's take a look at news making headlines this hour. The Israeli military has announced that it has commenced targeting Hezbollah positions in southern Lebanon following warnings to residents in 2 villages. The airstrikes are reportedly aimed at destroying Hezbollah's terror infrastructure in the region. EU Foreign Policy Chief Kaja Kallas has presented a new initiative aimed at improving the speed of military movements across Europe and transforming the defense industry to address emerging threats. This comes as she speaks on the need for stronger protection of Europe's critical infrastructure. Slovakia is contemplating legal action against the EU over its plan to halt Russian gas supplies by 2028, citing concerns over economic impact. Prime Minister Robert Fico has stated that both Slovakia and Hungary heavily rely on Russian energy and are worried that more expensive alternatives could harm their economies. Both chambers of the US Congress have now approved a bill requiring the Justice Department to release its files on Jeffrey Epstein. The House passed the measure overwhelmingly with a 427-1 vote, and the Senate too passed it in a unanimous vote. President Trump now has indicated that he will sign it once it reaches his desk. The World Health Organization has reported that nearly a third of all women worldwide have faced intimate partner or sexual violence. WHO Chief Tedros has condemned the lack of progress in addressing this pervasive injustice, as this new report reveals that 840 million women have been affected by some form of IPV. The new virus variant and slow vaccination rates may lead to a severe flu season in the United States. Health experts are now monitoring the mutated subclade K strain, which has caused early surges in the UK, Canada and Japan, according to a CDC report. While flu activity in the US is still low, it is increasing rapidly. A Russian missile strike on Ukraine's western city of Ternopil has killed at least 25 people, including 2 children, making it the deadliest attack in weeks. These come as Ukrainian President Zelensky was scheduled to continue talks in Turkey later in the day. Poland vows to respond soon to a railway explosion it blames on 2 Ukrainians allegedly collaborating with Russia. Foreign Minister Radoslaw Sikorski has condemned the attack as state-sponsored terror, stating that the response will include diplomatic measures. Well, viewers, those are the headlines and our top focus, what's taking place in the Middle East. The Israeli military has announced that it has started targeting Hezbollah positions in southern Lebanon following warnings to residents in 2 villages. The airstrikes were aimed at Hezbollah's terror infrastructure. Israeli military has also asked residents in the 2 villages in southern Lebanon to be evacuated. This comes after an Israeli strike near the Palestinian refugee camp in southern Lebanon, which killed 13, while Israel claims that they were targeting a training compound of the Hezbollah. Lebanese Health Ministry claims that it was civilians who were struck. Meanwhile, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has visited Israeli troops who are stationed beyond the ceasefire line in Golan Heights. He was accompanied by top officials including Defense Minister Israel Katz, Foreign Minister Gideon Saar, the Army's Chief of Staff Eyal Zamir, and the head of the Shin Bet Security Service David Zini as well. Israel has maintained a presence in the UN patrolled buffer zone in the region since the overthrow of former Syrian President, Bashar al-Assad in December. With us on the broadcast is Mr. Saul Satka, security analyst and author, joining us from Tel Aviv. Thank you so much for taking our time and speaking to us on NewsX World as we track these very crucial developments. We do know that strikes have been taking place in southern Lebanon. One of the key concerns that Israel has at the moment is with regards to the regrouping of Hezbollah. Hezbollah has so far shown no intent of disarming. Meanwhile, the Lebanese army has blamed Israel, stating that it is not able to live up to its ceasefire conditions because of these strikes. What do you think will now proceed from here? Because the United States too has made it very clear to Lebanon that it is time that they get their act in order and pressurize Hezbollah to disarm.
The situation in Lebanon has not improved in 40 years, 50 years even. Lebanon has been a basket case for 50 years. There's no prospect of it really improving on its own as it happens. The Israelis have made it very clear over the past year, more than a year now since a ceasefire took place in Lebanon, between Israel and Lebanon, that if the Lebanese themselves were not going to disarm Hezbollah, the Israelis would continue to attract them. Hezbollah have been trying to rearm. Their ability to rearm is very limited, but they have nevertheless been trying. And Israelis are intent on attriting them faster than they can rearm to ensure that they no longer pose a threat to the Israeli civilian population. And that's what's happening. That's what I assume will continue to happen for the indefinite future, because Lebanon, unfortunately, is a state that does not function and has never really functioned. It is full of militias that compete with each other. Hezbollah is a Shia militia. They control about a third of the population. They have the largest army, even after the Israeli attrition that occurred over the past 2 years. And in the long run, only Israel will be able to defeat them. The Maronites, other Christian groups, and the Sunnis are much weaker than Hezbollah even still, and don't seem to have the will or the wherewithal, or both, to be able to reduce them in power sufficiently to make Lebanon a functioning unitary authority. One can only hope for Lebanon in the future that they manage to reorganize their state, perhaps as a federation where the various denominations have control over some parts of the territory with their own militias, but at least that it should function, because currently it does not function.
Indeed, and apart from Lebanon, we've also seen a very crucial visit by Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. He's visited troops beyond the ceasefire line in Golan Heights, which are stationed currently at the UN buffer zone. What sort of signal is this sending to not just President al-Shara in Damascus, but also to Washington?
It's a clear signal from Netanyahu and his government that Israel will no longer play footsie with terrorists. There won't be any terrorist armies on Israel's border, and they will keep their forces in depth within foreign territories if that is what is required to ensure that civilians are no longer under threat. Israel would very much like to have peace with its neighbors, including Syria and Saudi Arabia, for example. But nevertheless, it has succeeded and become by far the wealthiest major state within 1,000 miles without peace with Syria or Saudi Arabia. And it will certainly not risk its civilians for a small economic benefit when economics are really not the issue at hand. They intend to maintain the buffer zones as required. My guess is that the summit of the Hermon Mountain, which was previously within a UN buffer zone and is now with full Israeli control, will not be withdrawn from very easily by the Israelis. They're rather fortifying it and setting up some spy equipment up there that vastly expands Israel's strategic horizons. And I think it's very unlikely that they will withdraw from that.
Absolutely. It does provide strategic advantage to Israel. But since you've mentioned Saudi Arabia, I'd like to digress a little bit over here. We've seen what's taken place at the Oval in the White House today. Trump meeting Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. There's been a $142 billion deal that has been inked between the United States and the Saudis with regards to the sale of F-35 fighter jets. So far in the Middle East, Israel is the only country that operates the F-35s. We've seen their capability in the 12-day war with Iran as well. To what degree is Israel really concerned with regards to this sale and its implications in sort of changing the delicate balance of power in the Middle East?
There's a lot more happening under the radar that is not open, that people are not aware about. So it's very unclear what the reality is. My guess is that from speaking to people, the Israelis are not concerned at all about the Saudis getting F-35s because the Saudis, while they will be able to fly them, it won't give them sufficient edge over the Israelis to make them ever be able to threaten Israel themselves. Israel has plenty of countermeasures. Israel is entirely capable of shooting down rockets and mortar shells out of the sky. They are not threatened by standard fighter jets, even if they are stealth and low cross action, etc. So they're not particularly worried about that. I think the Israelis are quite comfortable with it. They might even be in favor of it, because as much as the Saudis, even if they won't sign peace with Israel, and even if that never comes to pass, which is possible, although rumors have it that the major bloc is MBS's father, the king, who is currently very frail, that he is currently blocking the peace between Israel and Saudi, and that everyone involved wants it to happen, and it will happen soon. But even if it never happens, it could be that Israel is very keen for the Saudis to have these weapons, even though they will not arrive for at least 5 years, because that will provide a strategic problem for Iran, which is everyone's real enemy in the Middle East. Israel is not interested in having any kind of fight with the Saudis, and the Saudis definitely don't want any fight with the Israelis. And the F-35s won't help them in that balance of power.
Absolutely. With that, I'd like to thank you, Mr. Solsatka, for taking out time, of course, providing your perspective on these very crucial developments. On that note, viewers, we're shifting our focus away from the Middle East towards what's taking place in Europe. We're now learning that EU Foreign Policy Chief Kaja Kallas has emphasized the need to strengthen Europe's critical infrastructure and enhance rapid military mobility to bolster continental defense. Speaking alongside EU commissioners, Kallas has highlighted the importance of ensuring that forces can be deployed in the right place and at the right time. Listen in to her comments.
Our critical infrastructure needs more protection. The fast movement of Europe's militaries is essential for European defense. We have to ensure that forces can be in the right place and at the right time.
Now, the announcement accompanies a new EU package aimed at improving the rapid movement of military forces across member states and transforming the defense industry to address emerging threats. The initiative seeks to streamline cross-border military transport and enhance coordination among EU members. With us on the broadcast is Mr. David K. Johnson, who's an author, joining us from New York. Thank you so much for taking out time speaking to us on NewsX World. We've just heard what Kaja Kallas has had to say. This, of course, comes with regards to the barrage of attacks that are taking place against Ukraine. We've recently also seen a railway explosion take place in Poland. The Poles have, in fact, pointed their fingers at Russia. Slovakia, too. The Fico government has also called for strengthening the eastern flank. Amidst all of this, Kaja Kallas has come out and pointed towards the need to strengthen Europe's critical infrastructure to enhance a rapid military mobility to basically overhaul the logistics frameworks. I want to understand from you at the outset, what do you make of these statements, and if she is talking about a need to overhaul the logistics framework, the logistics systems that are in place, what's really needed to be done on that front? Mr. Johnson.
Sorry about that. 9 months after the Russian invasion of Ukraine, the EU's military operations began looking at the ability to move tanks, airplanes, and other heavy equipment. And they did research, quickly established that many bridges and railway bridges just are not equipped to carry something as heavy as a modern tank. There have been incidents in Europe as well where civilian authorities refused to allow the movement of military equipment because it was too heavy and would break up and damage local roads, as well as the pipes and other things underneath those roads. So this is an effort by Kallas to try and get Europeans to recognize that they need to take action, not just study the problem, because of the increasing aggressiveness of the Kremlin with the drone flights, the various incidents that you cited.
Indeed. And as I mentioned earlier, we'd also seen an attack that had taken place in Poland on its railway network in particular. The Polish foreign minister has in fact pointed fingers at Russia. There are 2 Ukrainians who are being alleged to have colluded with Russia, carried out the attack, then they have fled to Belarus. If it has been done by the Russians, is Russia trying to send some sort of message by targeting the railway network in particular?
Well, what Kremlin is trying to do is intimidate the European countries and to say, leave me alone as I try to conquer Ukraine. And to test the resolve of the European members of NATO to stand up to Russian aggression. There will be more incidents as Putin and his generals try to find weak points and things they can exploit. And they have among the leaders of EU countries a few allies to the Kremlin perspective of domination of the kind we saw up until the Soviet Union collapsed in 1989.
Indeed, sir. Requesting you to stay on with us as we're tracking further updates, this time from Slovakia. We're now learning that Slovak Prime Minister Robert Fico has announced that his government is considering to sue the European Union over its plans to halt Slovakia's Russian gas supplies from 2028. The move comes as Slovakia and Hungary remain highly dependent on Moscow's energy and worry about the costs of alternatives. The Slovak PM has also tasked his economy, foreign and justice ministers to analyze options for legal actions against the EU. Listen in to what he further said on the matter.
Bude dokument na rokovaní vlády budúci týždeň, kde zvážime možnosti podania žaloby. Bude veľmi záležať všetko od toho, ako si plní Európska komisia záväzky voči Slovensku, ktoré boli dané a podpísané priamo predsedníčkou Európskej komisie. Rovnako chcem zopakovať, že Slovenská republika hlasovala proti tomuto rozhodnutiu, pokiaľ ide o REPowerEU, zastavenie toku plynu, a myslíme si, že týmto rozhodnutím, kde sa inak mala vyžadovať jednomyseľnosť a ktoré bolo prijaté len väčšinou členských štátov Európskej únie, boli porušené viaceré základné predpisy Európskej únie ako tak.
Now, the Slovak Prime Minister has not specified how much it can claim while suing the EU or what legal basis it can use in the process. Additionally, Fico has also commented on EU's proposals to use frozen Russian assets for Ukraine, which is estimated at about 140 billion euros. He stressed that these plans raise legal questions and uncertainties, and he does not support any mechanisms that would lead to confiscation of Russian funds. Slovakia has earlier also opposed the European Union's policy towards helping Ukraine's defense. In fact, recently, Fico, while meeting with NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte, had emphasized that the Slovakian government would not directly supply lethal weapons to Kiev, with the exemption of simply allowing commercial contracts. Joining us on the broadcast is Mr. David K. Johnson. Interesting developments as far as Slovakia is concerned, because we have seen that they are trying to bolster their own air defense capabilities along the Eastern Front. They've acquired systems from Israel. They've bought F-16 fighter jets from the Americans. They've also, in fact, agreed on the need for a drone wall back in September. So on one hand, they are in agreement with the larger security apparatus, but on the other, as far as their energy needs are concerned, they have drawn the red line. If Slovakia is considering suing the EU over the latter's plans to halt Russian gas supplies from 2028, what sort of mechanism do you think is available for them to do so, and how could they go about doing that?
Well, how they would pursue this legally is a question I can't answer for you, and I don't think that the government can either. But it's important to note that before the Russian invasions, Prime Minister Robert Fico's country was counting on the Russians for 85% of their natural gas. they're now down to only about a third of their natural gas. So by 2028, they should be able to pivot away from the natural gas coming through what's called the Turk Stream pipeline from Russia. And it's important to note that FICO has made himself into an asset of the Kremlin. He went to their 80th victory celebration of the defeat of the Nazis. He has spoken favorably again and again about Vladimir Putin. So I suspect this is more an effort to probe whether there are wedges that can be driven among EU nations and Western European nations to help the Kremlin advance its fundamental goal of expanding its control of Eastern Europe.
Indeed, sir. On that note, I request you to stay on with us as we're tracking further updates. Now, the European Commission has announced plans to reduce the number of cookie consent banners shown to users while maintaining data privacy. Under the proposed changes, users would be able to indicate consent with a single click and save preferences through browser or operating system settings, streamlining the current process. Now, in a separate measure, the EU has also proposed giving companies more time to comply with rules on high-risk artificial intelligence. Now, originally set to take effect in August 2026, the deadline for compliance with EU's AI regulations, which entered into force last year, would now be extended to December 2027. This is the latest coming in on the tech front. Still with us on the broadcast is Mr. David K. Johnson. Interesting development as far as reducing cookie consent banners through browser-level preferences are concerned. There's, of course, we've seen a tussle between the EU and the big tech as of late over the last couple of years. What sort of message is the EU trying to send by laying down these guidelines, and as far as its stringent data protection standards are concerned?
Well, this goes to one of the important things I teach my students at Rochester Institute of Technology, my law students. In Europe, human rights, and that includes consumer rights, grow out of the concept of human dignity. In America, they grow out of property rights. So you get very different rules. And the Europeans have been much better than the Americans about big tech on gathering information, on turning the customer into the source of information they resell. In America, this problem of pop-up banners is completely out of control. A number of websites are virtually unreadable, and some publishers are beginning to recognize that if people can't read their content, then the ads are of no use whatsoever. So what they're trying to do here in the EU is take a situation that's not as bad as in America, but it's pretty bad from my last visit to Europe, and reduce the amount of just things flowing up on your screen and saying, you know, look at this, buy this product. And one click is probably the simplest, best answer. It was the EU, after all, that led the charge on saying we're going to use one uniform set of plugs instead of every new device having its own separate plug, which is incredibly wasteful to the environment and incredibly expensive to consumers. And hopefully the EU will adopt rules that are more friendly to consumers. And big tech, of course, counts on all of these automated banners where there's no workers involved to earn the kind of outsized profits, supranormal profits, as economists say, that they have come to expect and regard as a right.
Indeed, as you've mentioned, this stems out of human dignity. It's likely to, in fact, reduce user fatigue because while browsing through different sites, one often gets tired just seeing these cookie banners pop up repeatedly. But as far as streamlining cookie consent is and its impact on business models is concerned, how can then we see the advertisers sort of respond to this?
Well, advertisers, I think, should be right now taking a hard look at, are you in fact acquiring customers and bringing in revenue? Or are you annoying people and driving them away? And targeting has always been a problem. You know, most people don't see your ad. In the pre-internet era, however, where you had fewer outlets, fewer publications or broadcast stations, you threw something out there and then you tested the responses that you got. A lot of what you're seeing now seems very scattergun approach, not at all focused, highly inefficient. And why? Well, because the rates being paid to throw these annoying cookie banners out there that explode on your screen is incredibly low. So some adjustment to make price be an information point would be a big benefit to consumers. Mm-hmm. And it could be a benefit to the companies if it reduces annoyance. And I know there are a couple of companies I don't want to hear about them anymore because they keep, in my view, invading my experience on the internet.
All right, sir, with that, I would like to thank you for sharing your perspective on this interesting development. On that note, viewers, we're shifting focus to what's taking place in Turkey. We're now learning that Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is meeting with Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan in Ankara, where the two leaders will discuss strategies for securing a just peace in the ongoing conflict. During the meeting, Zelensky has stated that Ukraine hopes to revive the prisoner of war exchanges with Russia by the year end. During the trip, the Ukrainian leader also paid tribute to Mustafa Kemal Atatürk, Turkey's first president, at the Anıtkabir Mausoleum. One of the key aspects of his visit is to seek Turkey's support in reviving the involvement of the United States in efforts to end the ongoing war. Meanwhile, talks are being closely followed. U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff will not be attending the meeting, as confirmed by a senior U.S. State Department official. The official denied reports suggesting Witkoff's participation in the discussions, emphasizing that the envoy's absence from these talks is accurate. Meanwhile, the president of the Louvre Museum, Laurence Decars, has testified before France's National Assembly in a session focused on cultural governance, transparency and the preservation of natural heritage. During the hearing, the museum chief addressed questions related to funding, security measures and the management of one of the world's most visited cultural institutions. Lawmakers have pressed for clarity on the ongoing restoration projects, the protection of artworks amid rising global scrutiny, concerns as well as the museum's role in promoting access to art for the general public. The testimony has also touched on broader issues affecting French museums, including digitization efforts, international loans of artworks, and strategies to maintain attendance following post-pandemic fluctuations. We do know that the Louvre had made headlines after a robbery was reported where the French crown jewels were stolen. Well, viewers, due to paucity of time, it's a wrap on the World Report. We will continue to track these updates very, very shortly. On that note, a quick short break.